Hello there, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to look at a near extinct civilization encountered in 2374 by the USS Voyager, lost deep in the Delta Quadrant. Before we get started, please like, share and subscribe. Check out the other episodes in this playlist if you enjoy this one. It should be linked somewhere on this video. And with that said, let's get started on the Caatati. The Caatati were a humanoid species. They were encountered, as I said, by the USS Voyager in 2374. One of their vessels encountered was incapable of warp by this point due to massive power depletion. They were starved of resources, starved of food, and their species, despite their technological level, was truly struggling. They reached out with their very long fingers, basically asking for help from Voyager. Taking pity on them, of course, the Starfleet vessel would share as many resources as possible, particularly thorium isotopes, which much of their technology was based on, without which it simply couldn't function. In terms of appearance, they had a sort of very light brown skin with sunken eyes and very robust looking heads, sort of elongated at the back with lots of ridges. They had elongated fingers which almost looked like a sucker on the end of them, but probably wasn't a sucker. Their species did have little wisps of hair coming off the top of their head, but otherwise appeared to be a basically humanoid species. They wore raggedy clothes by this point, as their replicators were non-functional and they had no ability to produce new materials. Their civilization had been assimilated in 2373 after being invaded by the Borg. A population of many millions had been reduced to a population of mere thousands, with only 30 surviving starships, consisting apparently of two different classes of starship, one simply known as a larger Caatati vessel and a smaller Caatati vessel. These vessels were demonstrated to obviously have warp and impulse capability. They were defended by shields. They had tractor beams, replicator technology, but not transporters. They also had some form of weaponry, but not apparently photon torpedoes. These vessels on their own were no match for an Intrepid-class starship, but in numbers, even with their depleted power, were actually capable of becoming a threat to Voyager once it had ejected its warp core, which we will get to. Their species had, of course, made attempts to resettle colonies on new worlds where they could grow food and rebuild their civilization, but other races, possibly out of fear of allowing them to settle near to or inside their space due to their association with being assimilated by the Borg, and also their reputation by this point of being vagrants and having no resources or basically anything to bring to the table. Of course, many of the people aboard these ships will have been engineers and technicians and other such people who may have understood their technology to some degree. Their race had basically entered into what would have become the beginning of a dark age, and their ability to maintain their ships was becoming very sketchy, especially since they'd lost the ability to create thorium isotopes. This would be a technology returned to them by Seven of Nine, who retained this information from her time within the Borg collective. Although they had lost the ability, she knew how to do it, and she would create a thorium isotope generator as well as provide them with the specifications to manufacture new ones. This would allow them to at least begin the process of rebuilding their civilization and repowering their ships. After a year of drifting around in space, not only had they become vagrants, but also they had effectively become pirates. Although initially Voyager gave them as many resources as it could to help about 3 of their ships with a few hundred people on, they couldn't simply give them all the medicine, all the weapons, all the thorium, all the food that they needed for their entire fleet. But when Voyager had an engine malfunction and had to eject the warp core, they tractor beamed it, fought off one of Starfleet's shuttles, actually destroying it, nearly killing Lieutenant Paris and Lieutenant Torres in the process, leaving them adrift in space, but would then try to blackmail Voyager into giving them more resources and materials in exchange for the return of the warp core. In the end, this situation was diffused by the aforementioned Seven of Nine, giving them the ability to generate thorium isotopes once again, allowing their civilization to begin the process of rebuilding. Hopefully they have gone on to then found a colony and actually begin to increase in number once again, and hopefully the Borg, as they have a habit of doing, didn't come back to simply finish them off, as we do see that if a few survivors survive, the Borg consider that a race that will continue to resist the Borg, and the Borg clearly consider this race worthy of assimilation and not complete just farming as they do with other civilizations, hypothetically. The Caatati were a prominent and proud race at one point, at least they proclaimed themselves to be. Superficially, they did seem very peaceful, although it was seen that one of them reacted very violently to seeing Seven of Nine. Even though she was no longer a member of the collective, they actually wanted her handing over so that they could dish out some punishment. Side note as well, a Caatati female was actually seen at the Dabo tables aboard Deep Space Nine around the same time period. And although the maximum warp capability of Caatati vessels isn't known, it's not exactly explained how a Caatati female ended up in the Alpha Quadrant. There could be numerous reasons. One of them could be a similar reason to how a bunch of humans ended up at the far side of the Delta Quadrant. Alien intervention, someone else helped, the Borg, the Caretaker, the Q. Who knows? And maybe they just stranded her there, or her ship. We don't really know. It's never actually explained away how she got there. But the Caatati survived, which is one thing we can say about them. They didn't survive well, and it's likely that they would have lost much of their technology and much of their ability to replicate and improve much of it, as many of their scientific and greatest minds were likely assimilated or killed during the Borg invasion. Many of the people, it was noted aboard these ships, were civilians, children, including children, who had been saved either from colonies or from their homeworld as they evacuated as the Borg invaded. So it's not clear how well their civilization is currently doing, but hopefully their attitudes towards other civilizations improved a little bit after regaining the ability to repower their ships. Their vessels in and of themselves, as I said, even at full power, were not overly impressive starships compared to a Federation vessel, although 30 or so of them, although 27 actually were what turned up to confront Voyager, would have been more than a match for it. But the same thing could have been said about the Kazon. In numbers, there's enough of a threat. But nonetheless, hopefully the Caatati have managed to rebuild their civilization deep in the Delta Quadrant. Thus far, they have not been re-encountered by the United Federation of Planets or any of its representatives, so again, their fate is currently unclear if they fell a victim of some other enemy, the Borg caught up with them, or if they have managed to resettle and begin the slow process of rebuilding their civilization. Thus far, we are not sure. Or if perhaps any other colonies were out there that survived. It is at least a slim possibility. If some of them made it somehow to the Alpha Quadrant, there may have been others other than that one female that got there. Food for thought, just speculation. And that basically is the Caatati, a race native to the Delta Quadrant, unfortunately one of the many who would fall victim to the expanding Borg Dominion? Whatever we want to call the Borg, really. But that is it. If you enjoyed this video, leave your thoughts about the Caatati in the comment section below. What do you think was their ultimate fate? Were these people really a race of survivors, or were they doomed? Were they just clinging on to false hope? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you for watching. Bye bye.